Hey everyone. We
Hello.
are we are three of the four unqualified film bros with a yet to be named podcast. I'm George. You got Ben. You got Declan. I pointed at the wrong sides last time, so I have no doubt that that'll be the case again this time. But we're here. We're back for episode 2. Max couldn't be with us tonight, but he will hopefully be back next week. Guys, you see any good movies this week?
No, that was not a diss at Let There Be Carnage. I will be upfront about it to the podcast listening audience. Due to my work, I was not able to catch Let There Be Carnage. I could say it's a principled stance because no movie featuring Venom will ever be good as the greatest film of all time, Spider-Man 3. But that's not the case. It was purely I wasn't able to catch it this week.
So yeah, we're going to be talking about Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. Tom Hardy, Woody Harrelson, Michelle Williams, Reed Scott playing a guy named Dan,
Damn.
which Veep fans like myself will enjoy that fact. So Ben, you saw it. What do you think?
It was a movie. It definitely was a movie. You know, it wasn't a bad movie, but it was a little all over the place.
And just want to say there's a spoiler warning in effect if you haven't seen the movie yet. Declan, we're sorry, we're gonna spoil it.
What?
Go on, Ben.
You can't really talk about the problems with the story without talking about the story. So you know, I feel like a lot of the inner turmoil that goes on in this movie was pretty much covered in the first movie, and then you have like random just side plot. I mean, I felt like Carnage in a lot of ways was a side plot. He was just like there to get, you know, Eddie and Venom back together to being BFFs, but like they only fought him like once pretty much, and that was it.
Yeah.
You know, most superhero movies, you have like a few encounters, and then they're like, oh, he failed once, or you know, go back and you keep going. But this one was just they're having problems.
This one fell very much into the Iron Man 2 realm of superhero sequels for me.
Mm-hmm.
In that once again you get the same versus same CGI battle at the end. You know, in Iron Man you had Tony Stark against Obadiah Stane, the Ironmonger. They're each in an Iron Man suit. One's just bigger than the other. And then Iron Man 2, you get Tony Stark against Whiplash, and he's got the arc reactor powering his whips. So Venom, the first film, you had Riz Ahmed playing Drake, and that character merged with a symbiote. And then in Let There Be Carnage, Woody Harrelson as Cletus Cassidy merged with a symbiote.
Yep.
So that, and it's interesting. We'll get into that post-credit scene in a minute here, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do with a Venom threequel, if you will, to see if they take the characters of Eddie and Venom in any new directions, or they're just going to fight another bad guy combined with a symbiote.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Spider-Man trilogy from Sam Raimi did it a lot better. It's like the first one was him coming to terms with being Spider-Man, and the second one was like managing that and being Spider-Man, you know, managing being Peter Parker and being Spider-Man. But in this one, it's sort of like the same thing. Like Venom 1, Eddie Brock and Venom are like, you know, fighting, trying to figure out what to do. And then the second one, they're doing the same thing. They literally have the same plot device of like Venom leaving the body when he gets angry and like going to somebody else. And the same thing where, you know, he goes to his girlfriend, who's not his girlfriend, his love interest, who's
ex-fiance.
Dan, yep. And they like, she brings it back to him like twice. That happened in the two movies. It was like almost a carbon copy, but with Woody Harrelson.
Yeah, this sequel really leaned into the odd coupleness of Eddie and Venom's relationship, which was, it was quirky, it was new. We hadn't really seen that side of Venom on the big screen before. The first movie, obviously, you get 20 minutes of Topher Grace as Eddie Brock as Venom at the end of Spider-Man 3, but this was really the first time you could see their dynamic really develop. And then I 100% agree with you that it was more of the same in the sequel.
Yeah. And what's weird is like they also had a side plot, which was Cletus Cassidy, like him as a character and his like girlfriend and stuff. And they keep
Yeah.
hinting at things, but it's like it doesn't develop or go anywhere. It's just sort of there. And even at the end, I don't even know what they're trying to do. Like Cletus Cassidy's like trying to be a sympathetic character, but it just doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Serial killer, right?
Like, oh, you didn't write
Yeah.
about my abuses and stuff. It never goes over that at all. It's just like brings it up at the end. And he's got his girlfriend who, I don't know, they like hint at it that she saved him from being bullied or something. They sort of gloss over what in the
Yeah.
world, how many people he killed, or like they just go through family life and they're just like, oh yeah, but this guy's a serial killer too. It's just like sidebar.
Yeah, and Woody, Woody gave a great performance with what he was given.
Yeah.
He embodied Cletus Cassidy. But I will compare this to everyone's favorite Star Wars film, Solo: A Star Wars Story, which of course stars Woody Harrelson as Han's mentor, and in that role as Tobias Beckett. The first time I saw it, and even in recent viewings, Woody dissolves into his character, and I didn't really get that much from Cletus Cassidy. I could still just see that's Woody Harrelson with a really bad red wig.
And I think that the big problem was just like, I don't know, he was probably trying to develop a backstory for him, but like none of it was in the movie. So like he's got a lot of emotion, but it's hard for the audience to really feel the emotion because we don't know what the hell is going on.
Yeah. But in terms of the film as a whole, no discussion of Venom: Let There Be Carnage is complete without the mid-credit scene that changes everything.
Oh boy. Yeah. Oh god.
I saw the movie on Tuesday, and I'm still kind of reeling from it. Just from the post-credit scene, the film itself. There have been better superhero movies. There have been worse superhero movies. I think that the film could have been 20, 30 minutes longer and developed their characters a little bit more. 90 minutes is too short for a superhero movie. But the post-credit scene, the mid-credit scene rather. So if you haven't seen the movie, it's Declan. It's Eddie Brock and Venom south of the US border, sort of chilling on a honeymoon type deal.
Okay.
They're watching TV and Venom's like, I have secrets. I've experienced this hive mind of the multiverse. And Declan, I think you know where I'm getting with this. Eddie's like, can you show me the multiverse? And Venom's like, sure, why not? And then everything around them changes. And he goes from this rundown shack to like a nice hotel room. And on the TV is J. Jonah Jameson talking about Tom Holland as Peter Parker as Spider-Man. That's the big reveal of it. And I'm glad we're getting Declan's live reaction here.
It's J. Jonah Jameson from Far From Home.
From the post-credit scene of Far From Home, yeah.
Okay. Oh my.
Dailybugle.net. The Alex Jones type. So
rather than the like page to screen Sam Raimi version. Oh my god.
So Venom's in the MCU.
What? Wait, how did he? Wait, how it just changed? It just changes.
So,
like there's.
I think it's probably going to tie into the multiverse of madness, and No Way Home, where like when Doctor Strange changes reality with all these villains coming out, I imagine he could have pulled from the Venom universe as well, and so Venom might be the secret character. You know that they were saying like there was a secret character coming. There were what, 6 or whatever.
Sinister Six.
5. Venom might be the 6th one.
You got Goblin, Doc Ock, Lizard, Sandman, Electro. That's all the first trailer for No Way Home showed. You're exactly right, Ben.
Yep.
So Sinister Six, in the comics, Venom has been a member of the Sinister Six.
Wow.
So,
and this also sets up like a lot of things when you bring the symbiotes in, because you got Thor 4 coming out. It's going to feature Gore the God
Butcher.
Uh,
Christian Bale.
Joining the Marvel Universe. And so Gore gets a blade, basically powerful enough to kill the gods. He's angry because the gods couldn't save him in his like home. But that sword is the Necro sword, like all black, the Necro sword, and that comes from Null. Null is like the god of the symbiotes. He's what all the symbiotes came from. He's also what like decapitated the Celestial. That's what that, well, at least in the comics, Nowhere, that floating head that the Collector uses as like a base of operations. That's a Celestial's head. And the comics, that was decapitated by Null, because they were like encroaching on his territory. So I'm thinking that, you know, all of us could eventually bring Null into the fold. And that would be very cool, because Venom has some great arcs. There was a recent arc, the King in Black arc for Venom, where he basically kills Null and like becomes god of the symbiotes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
can do now.
It's interesting that you bring up Thor 4 in terms of connecting it to the multiverse. And, you know, Multiverse of Madness is coming out within weeks of Thor Love and Thunder next winter, spring. First one is in March, second one's in May, if my memory serves. We haven't heard that much about Thor Love and Thunder. We know the cast. We know Tessa Thompson and Natalie Portman and, you know, Jamie Alexander, most of Taika Waititi, exactly. Most of the Guardians. It's going to be a killer cast. We haven't heard that much about the Guardians, and the multiverse rather, and one cast member who's been in the first 3 Thor movies is not currently listed for Thor Love and Thunder. Tom Hiddleston. And so, I don't know if they're going to make the second season of Loki in the next 6 months. I doubt it. But could we see the Multiverse of Madness? Because we know Tom Hiddleston will be in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness as Loki, as the Loki from the end of the Disney Plus TV series. Could we see that version of Loki show up in Thor's life in Love and Thunder? If we're bringing the multiverse into that movie.
Yeah.
You know, can I just I got to say something with all this. Okay, this is blowing my mind quite a bit, because can I be real?
Please.
I had heard a little bit that there was some sort of MCU crossover in mid credit scene Venom, like something that's like, oh, is Venom part of the wider thing? And I was like, when I heard that, honestly, what I thought was something. I mean, I don't mean to be cruel, but like semi-lame. Lame's too strong. But it was what I was basically honestly envisioning is like Eddie Brock in like a prison of some sort, and then it's like, hello, my name is Michael Keaton. I played the Vulture in Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm right here. Am I also the Vulture? Am I the same character? I don't know.
You do a great Michael Keaton, Declan.
Thank you. I I watched him in interviews for 6 hours straight to reach that impression. So I appreciate that. Thank you. But I was basically expecting something much less blatant than that.
Yeah.
That is genuine. That is fascinating to hear that it's like, no, like this is Tom Holland, like, and J. Jonah Jameson MCU version. Like that's like, well, that's like blowing my mind. Kind
the
of.
thing about that scene where you see Eddie and then Venom takes over their collective body and comes to the outside, the forefront, is you see the TV screen and you see obviously J. Jonah Jameson as himself from the end of Far From Home, but then it shows Peter Parker, Tom Holland as Peter Parker, with his head not masked in the Spider-Man suit, which is not something we saw in Far From Home. He reacted to the breaking news alert fully Spider-Man'd out because he obviously still had his secret identity. So Venom appeared to recognize Tom Holland. Maybe the hive mind of Venom's symbiote background is connected to the Venom from Spider-Man 3 who recognizes Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
Well, I mean, he also can read, it says Spider-Man on it, but I would assume that Venom, like probably tons of symbiotes in plenty of different universes, have encountered like a Spider-Man.
True.
So I would assume like that's how he knows. He doesn't maybe not know. Maybe he doesn't know like Tom Holland specifically, but he knows Spider-Man.
Do you think we will see, just Declan, from what you've heard from the two of us just now, and Ben, from what you've seen in the movie today? I know you saw it today, and the No Way Home trailer that we've all seen 1,000 times by now. Yes or no, one-word answer. Do you think Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock / Venom is going to be in Spider-Man No Way Home? Yes or no, one-word answer.
Yeah. I mean,
I am inclined to agree.
With the crossover that like full on and apparent, I feel like he's probably going to be in it. And I would make a joke about how everyone would be like, "Who's this guy?" But of course, Venom, Let There Be Carnage was a massive hit. Like, isn't it like pretty big or like the biggest of?
It had the biggest opening weekend of any film for the pandemic era. So since March of 2020, it was the biggest release over an opening weekend.
Until James Bond.
Nice. Okay. Well, it was still
No Time to Die is. Yeah.
As a James Bond fan, I'm glad to hear that. But even still, I'll give credit also. Congrats to Andy Serkis for in his second directorial but second director thing. I think maybe he's I think he directed like a Jungle Book movie on Netflix and something.
That man is the king of nerd culture because he's been in Star Wars, he's been in Marvel movies, he directed this movie, he was in Planet of the Apes. He's done it all.
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings, exactly. I knew I was missing one. But yeah, the guy's got range.
Amen.
And special effects producers have range too to make him look all different sorts of ways through motion capture.
I got to give a quick recommendation. If you ever get the chance on the Blu-ray for Last Jedi, there's a special feature presented by Rian Johnson even gives an interview where it shows Andy Serkis performing Snoke but with no CGI. It's just the footage of him performing, and it's like he's honestly so great without CGI that you almost feel like Snoke should have just been Andy Serkis himself, it's.
Well, I hate to bring up, but I also kind of love to bring up Solo, a Star Wars story. Paul Bettany, well-known name, and he was mostly himself as the villain in that film. So, not outside the realm of possibility for Star Wars to do that. Yeah, Venom,
but still,
Let There
man,
Be
that's
Carnage, mid-credit scene is just it changes everything. I think is the bottom
Okay.
line.
Yeah.
if I get I'll now if I get the chance to see it, I'll let the podcast know how I feel about it. And on a brief aside, I'll put it like that.
And one thing that probably should have been an indicator. This is the first time I've been to the movies a lot more in the last few weeks than I had obviously in the last year and a half. But this was the first time I've been back to the movies and seen the No Way Home trailer attached to a movie. Like obviously it'll be attached to Eternals because Marvel and Marvel. But it wasn't attached to Shang-Chi, even though that movie came out after the trailer was released. I saw Free Guy in theaters, and it wasn't attached to that. So maybe that should have been an indicator that there might be some connection. But again, Venom is one of the key members of Spider-Man's rogue gallery, so probably could have expected some connection. Just don't know if we expected it this soon.
Yeah.
And so blatant. Like I said, I was honestly expecting something much more subtle and much more like low key than that.
Bringing up what you said again about Michael Keaton is he was in the Morbius trailer, and Morbius is coming out like 6 weeks after No Way Home. So we're gonna see if it's Adrian Toomes as the Vulture in Morbius, and whether that character is crossing over into the Sony Spider-Man universe or whatever they're calling it now. Sony universe of Marvel characters.
Man,
so I do want to move on. We planned out today's episode over the last week. One of the big stories in entertainment of the last week has been the release of a House of the Dragon trailer. Declan, I know you wanted to go off on this, so I'll defer to you.
Well, I am both very excited for House of the Dragon. They're on the trailer, but also a little bit nervous, kind of, because I'm
of
like
season 8.
Yes, season 8. Like here, I have a lot to say, but basically season 8 of Game of Thrones, as I would agree with most people, found it to be a very disappointing conclusion to the great story that was Game of Thrones, and thus any new TV property I feel like has that weight on it, possibly put on unfairly to it. That it's like, oh man, will this be good? But there is a lot that I feel like I'm very excited about. Even the Dance of the Dragon itself being adapted is something I'm both excited about, but also nervous, because the Dance of the Dragon, in the backstory, for those of us who've read Fire and Blood, first of all, nerd. Second of all, you know that it's a very exciting conflict, but it also devolves in a sense, in that like it starts off as like this grand struggle. It's like, well, not grand struggle, but it's like, oh, Rhaenyra versus Aegon, who's gonna win? But by the end, both of them have kind of become bad people and have destroyed so many like towns and settlements, and like there's been multiple betrayals. There's this almost sadness to the conflict as it goes on, and I wonder how that will play on TV and all that. At the same time, though, I do believe that it will undoubtedly, I think, be exciting to see more proper dragon on dragon combat. Seeing all.
I'm glad you added combat to that.
Yeah, I mean, it did happen. Oh, it's happened. There were multiple really exciting, really, for lack of a better term, epic duels between dragon riders throughout the conflict, and that was undoubtedly one of the motivations for adapting this era in the Game of Thrones history into a TV show. But I will say this one thing that I was very surprised, but also very happy to learn. I saw sort of in preparing to discuss it, I just saw a clip of someone showing the show creator for House of the Dragon. It was a sort of a clip. It was a YouTube video that showed a clip from a podcast with him and George R.R. Martin talking. And from the podcast clip, to my surprise, the show creator, his name is completely escaping me. I should have written it down, and for that I feel bad. But the show creator, he's actually a big fan of the Game of Thrones books and the backstory. He seems really into it, and that I didn't know that was the case, but that honestly excites me, and I find that sort of like this guy has a real knowledge of the source material and George R.R. Martin as a writer. Like, one of the problems with season 8, it was sort of like one of the early problems that then morphed into the disappointing ending, was the fact that D.B. Weiss and David Benioff, the two creators of Game of Thrones, most people agree they were basically very excited about adapting the first 3 books. I'm not spoiling it for anyone who hasn't watched it yet. The equivalent of adapting the first 3 books, but didn't really get or seem to be that motivated by the last 2 books. And so because of that, they kind of seem to not have a grasp on the story that was being told, and thus left with a much weaker story, for lack of a better term. The story just wasn't there. With the House of the Dragon, they have a complete story. The Dance of the Dragons is one of the most fully fleshed out backstory pieces in George R.R. Martin's history. You know, like if you read Fire and Blood Volume 1, you basically get the full story, and there's no but this part is a mystery. Like, no, you get the full story. And so not only do they have that, they have the full story, but they also, the guy clearly enjoys and is interested by the story that has been told. And so because of that, I have some hesitation because of season 8, but I do have high hopes that the creative forces and creative energies are going in the right direction to create a really compelling and really great adaptation of this story of the Dance of the Dragons, and what was told in Fire and Blood. And so I'm hesitant but excited, and I think the trailer itself, I should talk about the trailer itself a little bit too. Apologies for that as well. The trailer itself, again, has a lot of that great George R.R. Martin spark to it. Like it's very short, but like the costume design and sort of like, and what's in it, like Blackfire. That's really exciting to see. I hope the cast can pull off these really in-depth characters that have been depicted in the backstory. I hope they do. Matt Smith is a very interesting casting as Daemon Targaryen, but I think he's a very good actor and capable, and so I'm optimistic that all of them will do a great job, and I hope they do.
So Ben and I got to talk about Venom, and Declan got to talk about House of the Dragon. Ben, any thoughts? Declan summed up how I'm feeling about it.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I you have great source material, but that's not always used. And also, I think a real reason why Game of Thrones was bad at the end was not because they weren't enthusiastic about the later books, but they didn't have books for the ending.
Absolutely, so that is also.
They just went off of key plot points, and I think that the plot points don't make Game of Thrones, right? It's how you get to those plot points. And so the last few seasons always felt like characters were just doing things, but it didn't make sense. Probably because George R.R. Martin would have written things a certain way so that they would make sense, but they were not smart enough to get there. So
without question, that is absolutely true.
And hopefully we'll see how they do. Is this going to be like a limited, time series? Is it just like one season or a few seasons?
That is a good question. What I'll say is I haven't heard it referred to as a miniseries, so I'm going to guess that they probably
8-10
I don't know.
episodes.
What?
It'll probably be 8-10 episodes if it's being qualified as a miniseries.
I'm gonna guess three seasons. I've had nowhere do I have any basis for that, but I'm gonna say it's semi-short.
That's what you want to see. It's 3 seasons. Yeah, I watched the trailer for the first time in full. I'd seen clips of it. I pulled some of it from my newscast last week, and I produced TV news. But this is the first time I had seen it in full, like actually focusing on it. And interesting casting choices again, as Declan you said, but cautiously optimistic. Great source material. I think it's going to be popular, at least to start. Game of Thrones was a huge phenomenon when it made its debut and gained that following over the course of 8 seasons. So now Game of Thrones fans are getting a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully it also just the energy motivates George to finish writing Winds of Winter, which I do genuinely believe we will see eventually. But
he said he would finish it by July of 2021. All right.
He always overestimates when he's going to finish.
So something that I know Max wanted to participate in tonight, our Zoom recording, we're still figuring this out, but our Zoom recording does have only about 5 minutes left because apparently this time I need to upgrade to Pro, but last time I didn't, so we had a little bit longer of an episode. I'll figure out what that means by next week. We have 5 minutes left in the call, and we have to stop the recording before then. Why am I telling you all of this? Anyway, we wanted to move on to our favorite. We did our favorite Martin Scorsese movies last week. I want to move on to our favorite Adam McKay movies. He's one of my favorite directors. One of the best comedy directors of the late 2000s, early 2010s. He's done some great work in dramatic films with The Big Short and with Vice. So top 3. Since I'm the one rambling, I guess I'll go first. My top 3 for Adam McKay. I when we planned this last week, I knew what the 3 were, and I didn't know what the order was, but I've sort of figured that out, and that's Step Brothers, number 1, one of the best buddy comedies of all time. Number 2, Anchorman. That was my entire high school experience, was just quoting that movie to my buddies. I didn't know what memes were yet.
And now you're in TV news.
Yeah. And number 3 was The Other Guys, which I will admit I didn't see until after college, but is now one of my favorite movies of all time. So Step Brothers, Anchorman, The Other Guys. Ben.
I'm going to say, first of all, I'm disappointed that you didn't put my favorite Adam McKay movie, Talladega Nights, on there.
I considered it. A
fantastic satire of American culture and all that goes with it, all the stereotypes. And then for second, obviously Anchorman. It does a similar type of satire, but for the news world. And then third, I'd have to go with The Big Short, as it was a nice change of pace for him. It showed his variety, and it gave off like a really unique directing style, with like Margot Robbie in a bathtub explaining things to you.
Yeah, that scene sticks out, doesn't it, Ben?
Yeah, that one really sticks out. But it was a unique, vision. And I thought the movie itself was really put together well. All the acting was great. Christian Bale, fantastic. So yeah, those are my listings.
Declan?
For me, so number 3, I would like to say that it's The Big Short. And The Big Short's a great film. It's a really good thing. But it's also it's also very satisfied with itself. It's both simultaneously talks about an important moment of history really well, but it also feels like it's talking about a really important moment in history itself. So I wish I could say The Big Short is my number 3. It's a fantastic film, but I have to make my number 3 Step Brothers. Again, exactly what you said. One of the best pairing. I'm talking about favorites. One of the best pairings of actors together. Farrell, Riley, gold. They just, and so much of it is fantastic. Number 2, Anchorman. Though that's mainly because I've happened to see Anchorman more times than Step Brothers. So it's merely just like more familiarity. But again, it has, Farrell, again, fantastic. Steve Carell, phenomenal. I list every cast member and you'll find a great performance.
Yeah.
And quotes all around, great comedy. The number 1, I think there's no question for me. It's The Other Guys. The Other Guys, I feel, is a perfect synthesis of old Adam McKay and new Adam McKay. Like it is telling the story of the financial crash in it, but it is also simultaneously this perfect pairing of Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg as comedy actors. And I feel and it is the best of both worlds with Adam McKay. I feel like it has both the story and the comedy. That makes it a classic and my personal favorite film directed by Adam McKay.
And Max isn't here, but he lives in Washington, D.C., so we'll just assume his favorite is Vice. I guess we'll check in with him. We'll check in with him on that next time. We have less than a minute left, so we're going to wrap it up. We are 3 of the 4 unqualified film bros with a yet to be named podcast. Maybe you can help us name it. We'll be on YouTube.
Leave a comment.
Soon to be on Spotify. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Yep.
Yeah.